everyone. Welcome to the San Diego Opera Podcast. I'm Nick Reveles, and I'm honored to be your host for this now weekly podcast on all things opera and on our upcoming season. So let's get started. Gilbert and Sullivan. Now there's a pair of names that are always thrown together. You hardly hear one without the other. Unlike in the musical theater world where it's common to mention Lerner and Loewe, Rodgers and Hammerstein, etc., as integral co-creators of a work, we opera folks don't typically go around saying Da Ponte and Mozart, Piave and Verdi, von Hofmannsthal and Strauss. In opera, we're a little bit more biased toward the composer than the librettist or the word guy. But Gilbert and Sullivan, their names are always paired together and they're synonymous with theatrical fun. Do you know which one was the composer and which one the librettist? Frankly, if you don't, that's fine, because in all the lyric art forms, be it Broadway musicals or opera, the words are as important as the music, and these two geniuses, they worked very closely together on some of the masterpieces of English musical theater. So who was who? Let me fill you in. William Schenck Gilbert, more commonly known as W.S. Gilbert, was the playwright, librettist, or wordsmith, and Arthur Sullivan was the composer. Gilbert was a writer very involved in theater in London, writing mostly satires and comedies for family-friendly audiences. In doing so, he helped raise the overall level of estimation of theater during that time, because it had become something rather disreputable to be attached to. He met the young composer Arthur Sullivan in 1869. Sullivan was already a composer of some note, having first studied at the Royal Academy of Music in London and then abroad. When he returned from his studies, he was considered one of England's young up-and-coming composers. The two men began their collaboration in 1871 with a Christmas entertainment called Thespis, a rowdy burlesque about Greek gods and goddesses that ran for 63 performances. This was the first of 14 works that came from these two incredibly creative minds, producing works like HMS Pinafore, The Mikado, and The Pirates of Penzance. In all of the GNS works, Gilbert followed a dramatic formula he liked to call topsy-turvy. What's that, you ask? Well, it's setting up an absolutely ridiculous premise and then working out and developing it with a perfectly straight face. In the words of a famous English director, Gilbert would set about to tell a perfectly outrageous story in a completely deadpan way. Part of the fun was the opportunity for Gilbert to toss in satirical commentary on Victorian society, and well, there was a lot to make fun of. In just about every production of a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, political and social commentary will be updated to fit the contemporary environment, and I'm sure our production will do much the same. This gave Sullivan an opportunity to write music that was every bit as fun and satirical as Gilbert's words. He did this by sending up contemporary Italian and French opera style. At this time in the mid-19th century, London was hearing the music of Offenbach, Wagner, Rossini, Verdi. These musical styles were ripe for comic target practice, and Sullivan was really clever in the way that he would take the rhythmic and melodic patterns of these composers, turn them on their heads, and give them a cheeky English accent. All this in combination with Gilbert's topsy-turvy formula sold lots of tickets, and it became a staple of the British theatrical landscape. So why am I excited to see Pirates of Penzance here at San Diego Opera in October? A couple of reasons. First of all, we've never done GNS, and it's damn time we did. There's just no reason for us not to. If we could produce Lehar's The Merry Widow, Strauss's Die Fledermaus, which we have, we could certainly make space for Gilbert and Sullivan. Also, it's the most operatic of all 14 of their works, so the style will be familiar to a lot of you, and more about that in a future podcast. What a fun way to kick off the season, and a wonderful way to introduce our audience to the delights of Gilbert and Sullivan. That's it for me. I'm Nick Reveles. I'll see you at the opera.